Hello, my name is Keshwani. There's K-E-S-H-W-A-N-I, Keshwani. We are here because we want to prepare for SAT. We have been solving SAT grammar questions out of this book here, the official SAT study guide. If you do not own it already, purchase one immediately. You're going to need it. The problems that we are about to solve are the ones that you will find on page number 836. Please turn to it, page 836, and today's our lesson number 36. These are a series of 11 questions, as I always remind you when we start this section. These are a series of 11 questions, and since there are 11 of them, that means approximately first 3 or 4 are easy, the next 3 or 4 are medium, the last 3 or 4 are hard. Starting with question number 12, we will find that those are different type of questions, and therefore the scale of difficulty will start all over again. But here we have 1 through 11. The ones that we see on the first page, page number 836, they are all easy. On the following page, as you turn the page, in the first column we will have medium questions, in the second column we will have the hard ones in the series of 11. Let's get going. On this page we have 3 of them, and they are all quite straightforward and simple. They are easy questions. On a scale of 1 through 11, they are 1, 2 and 3. Number 1. It says the problem of copyright violation. The problem of copyright violation and there is a comma, frequently compounded in certain countries, and all of this is underlined starting from the violation up to here, compounded in certain countries, because the sale and use of copyright materials are not tightly controlled. Because the sale and use of copyright material is not tightly controlled. Do you see a problem with it? There are 2 problems with this sentence. One problem with this sentence is the same thing that we found yesterday when we were working on the problems. If you compare this particular problem, this is number 1 on page 836. I want you to compare this problem with number 8 on page number 775. Turn to it. Turn to page 775. Look at question number 8 and see if you can remember what was going on there. In that question, they mention the name of a person, C.G. Young, I believe it was, and then they go on to say a Swiss psychologist. There was no verb in it, and we had to insert the verb. C.G. Young was a Swiss psychologist. There was no verb in the sentence. You cannot have a sentence without a verb. That is the exact same thing is going on here. It says the problem of copyright violation, and then he goes on to say frequently compounded in certain countries because the sale and use of the copyright material is not tightly controlled. But there is no verb in the beginning. The problem of copyright material, the problem of copyright violation is frequently compounded. We don't need a comma here. We need to get rid of the comma, and you need to put in the verb. The problem of copyright material, the problem of copyright violation rather, is frequently compounded in certain countries because the regulations are not tightly controlled in those areas. And we need to get rid of this. That's one issue here. Second issue here is that, now let's read how it's, let's read what it says now. The problem of copyright violation is frequently compounded in certain countries because is also underlined, because the sale and use of copyright material is not tightly controlled. I don't like the word because there. It should say the problem of copyright violations is frequently compounded in certain countries where, not because, where the sale and use of the copyright material is not tightly controlled. That's it. Now we're going to lift our hand now. I forgot to remind you one more time here. Your answer should have been covered throughout this entire discussion. Don't look at the answer choices. Your answer should be covered with one hand. You should have the pencil in the other hand. We fix the sentence ourselves without looking at the answer choices. Once we have fixed it the way we wanted it, then we lift our hand and look for the answer choice that comes closest to it. We're not looking for the exact same thing. We're not hoping that we're going to find the exact same wording. We're going to pick the one that comes closest to it. Let's look at B's. Let's look at B, C, D, and E. B says, well, B doesn't have the verb. We're looking for a verb. We need a is. B doesn't have it. Neither does C. There you go. D says, the problem of copyright violation is frequently compounded in certain area. Where? There we go. Wow, what do you know? By golly, jackpot. And E says, the violation is frequently compounded in certain areas. So, we don't need so, we need where. Where, the place is where the regulations are not tightly controlled. The answer is D. The answer is D. Let's look at number 2. It took a while. I was surprised it took a while to do, even though it was number 1. The protesters coming this far, alright. The protesters coming this far, and then they have a comma, they, and all of this is underlined, decided to insist that they meet with the president before leaving the building. All right. The protesters coming this far, they decided to insist that they meet with the president. It starts out in a very awkward way, doesn't it? Let's see what we can do with it. Do not look at the answer choices. That's the whole point. If you look at the answer choices, you're going to be confused, because every single answer choice all of a sudden begins to look right, and you end up spending tremendous amount of time, inordinate amount of time, trying to find the one that actually is the right answer. Because as soon as you look at the answer choices, your thinking is no longer pure. It's polluted by the garbage that they give you in the 4 wrong answer choices. Having come this far, how about that? Let's forget about the protesters here. Having come this far, the protesters, there you go. The protesters, and we don't need a comma, that's it. Having come this far, the protesters decided to insist on seeing the president before leaving the building. Is that what it says? Decided to insist that they meet with the president. Same thing. Having come this far, the protesters decided to insist that they meet with the president before they leave the building, or before leaving the building. Let's look at the answer choices. B, C, D, and E. B says, they coming this far. We don't have that. We want to start out with having come this far. Having come this far, the protesters insisted, or rather they decided to insist on seeing the president before they left the building. Having come this, I'm looking at C now. Having come this far, the protesters, there you go. The answer is C. D says to come this far. No, that's ridiculous. Not to come this far. And E says protesters came this far. No, that's not it. The answer is C. Having come this far, they decided to insist on seeing the president before they left the building. Number 3. Now the problem with number 3, I find these questions very annoying. The one that we see in number 3. The ones where the entire bloody thing is underlined. So I have to first of all write the whole thing on the blackboard, and secondly, it takes a little bit of time, because now we have to, if it's just a small portion of the sentence underlined, those are the easy ones, because then you can very quickly see what's wrong with it. Here the entire sentence is underlined. We'll see what we can do. First I have to write the bloody thing. Our lab instructor gave us the assignment and we continued to do so for the remainder. Oh, and I left something out, and we started working busily, and we started working busily, and we continued to do so for the remainder of the period. As you can see, the bloody thing is very awkward. It is very awkward the way it is written. Do not look at the answer choices. Do not look at the answer choices. Ask yourself, what can we do here? Our lab instructor gave us the assignment and we started working busily, and we continued to do so for the remainder of the period. It is very awkward, it is very verbose, it is not very concise. So what we can do? Let's move this second part here. After, how about that? After our lab instructor gave us the assignment, so I don't have to write here. After our lab instructor gave us the assignment, we started working. We don't need the end part. We started working busily and continued to do so for the remainder of the period. Well, there you go. I think that should do it. Actually, that wasn't so bad. It can be that simple. After our lab instructor gave us the assignment, we started working busily and continued to do so for the remainder of the period. Let's see what we can do now. Let's look at the answer choices. So let's lift our hand and see what we can do. B, C, D, and E. So we want to start out the sentence by the word after. After the lab instructor gave us the assignment, we started working busily and continued to do so for the remainder of the period. Upon starting to work, that's not it. C says, following our lab instructors giving us the assignment, oh, for crying out loud. After our lab instructor gave us the assignment, we started working, we worked busily. It does not say we started working busily. We worked busily for the remainder of the period. Oh, that's even better. I like it very much. This is actually better than what P836 wrote down here. This is written in an even more elegant form. What does E say? We worked busily for the remainder of the lab period when the assignment had been given by us. Oh, Jesus, no. The answer is D. That's it. The answer is D. I will see you tomorrow, where we will continue with this thing on the next page, where we will do the medium and the hard questions, the remaining 8 in the series of 11 questions. Alright? Bye now.